your first starring role, Back to the Future. Were you surprised by the impact the film had had?
Yeah, I was surprised.
We were fortunate enough to have been 6 years old in 1985, which means the movie Back to the Future has been there nearly our entire lives. We saw it during its first run at the town cinema, several more times as part of a double feature at the Canview Drive-In, on videocassette, on television.
It's the network premiere of an all-time family favorite. And now, Back to the Future.
By the time Back to the Future Part 2 came out 4 years later, I remember thinking, why bother to make a sequel to such an old movie? They might as well have put out The Wizard of Oz Part 2.
This summer, Walt Disney Pictures presents Return to Oz.
Oh wait, they did. Roger Ebert liked to say he defined a great movie as one you cannot bear the thought of never seeing again. It's impossible to know how many times we've watched Back to the Future over the years, but it's got to be more than the number of times we've seen Goodfellas and Star Wars combined. And because the filmmakers created such a rich, living world, every once in a while, we notice a small detail we haven't before. Like the small drop of chocolate milk that hits Pop Tate's shirt collar. The actor's reaction looks pretty natural, leading me to wonder if this was unintentional. The character has already been established as a big crab.
Are you gonna order something, kid?
If one of these dipshit kids stained his clothes like that, he'd at least give them a death look. But the actor knows he can't mess up the shot by making a big deal of it, so he continues how he's been directed, to just serve the customers. I also thought that George was just peeping on some random girl. I didn't realize that was Lorraine's house. I always thought the story was kinda cute about how he had a crush on a girl who was out of his league, but now he looks like a creep who's stalking her. It was more romantic when I thought he was just peeping on some random chick.
And an accused peeping Tom busted for allegedly sneaking into yards at Valley Homes to look at teen girls through the window.
This peeping Tom business makes him more like Biff. Suddenly they're two sides of the same coin, like Batman and the Joker.
Never rub another man's rhubarb.
We see that both George and Biff are capable of violating Lorraine. Sure, Biff is clearly much worse because he physically attempts to rape her. At least I pray to God the word attempt still applies. But if George only had a little more gumption, who knows what he would have been capable of. You have to remember that minor sex crimes like being a peeping Tom usually escalate. It's probable George would have graduated from peeping on her to actually sneaking into her window at night to watch her while she sleeps. Probably steal some of her panties, leave a mess on the mattress.
Somebody broke in and masturbated on the bed.
It changes how I think of the confident George we see at the end of the movie.
Oh, honey, your first novel.
Well, if it's only his first novel, that must mean he has a day job somewhere that keeps the family living in the lap of luxury. Like maybe he's a tenured professor or something? A job where he has lots of power he can leverage to sleep with young interns. I'm not saying George is a full-on sadist drugging and raping women like Bill Cosby, but I can see him sucking on their hair and banging them in his office like David Letterman.
Like I've always told you, you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything.
The initial friendship between Doc and Marty is also darker than I remember. The Doc has no way of knowing if the experiment is really going to work, yet he risks both his life and Marty's on it. He doesn't even have to tell Marty to stand in the path of a speeding car. He just shoots Marty that death look, and Marty obeys like a dog. I wonder what other things Doc has done that makes Marty so compliant.
Hey, McFly!
Throughout the movie, Biff is surrounded by his gang of flunkies. They're with him at the diner, at the dance, in the shit. One of them is played by future Titanic villain Billy Zane. However, during the cafeteria scene in the high school, the other two bullies are there, but no Billy. Did he have the day off? Was he too drunk to come out of his trailer? I assume this has to do with the fact half the movie had to be reshot after the original Marty, played by Eric Stoltz, was replaced by Michael J. Fox. Like when they went back to reshoot the cafeteria scene, Billy just wasn't available. And we do know the scene was originally shot with Stoltz, based on the recollection of Thomas Wilson, who played Biff.
Oh, I shot with Eric Stoltz for 6 or 7 weeks.
You did?
Oh, yeah. We shot almost the whole movie.
Do you remember anything about his performance?
It was a very different thing. What do you want me to say? I think it was bad, and he wasn't friendly to me. Eric got fired a couple days before he was just going to get his head pounded in, because in the scene in the cafeteria where he's pushing me He was pushing me so hard with his whole method thing. The method was very strong toward me. So he was driving the heels of his hands hard into my collarbones. And I'm talking to him between takes, hey, Marty, you're going to break my collarbone, man. And take 2. Bam! Into my collarbones. And I'm starting, pardon me, Eric, this is a movie. It's only in pretend times when you're getting paid that you can push me like that and I don't punch you right in the face. So, let's chill out. Bam! I had huge bruises on my chest and my collarbones were killing me. I was going, live by the method, die by the method. In a couple of nights, I'm pulling you out of that car at the dance and we're going to see what happens then. So and then he got fired. So I never got to do anything.
Come on! I'm not fooling around up here. I got a tuba and I'll use it, folks. Okay.
Did you have to reshoot everything, or did they keep stuff from the original?
There's a big argument. It's my belief that Eric Stoltz's fist punches me in the 50s cafe. Because I do not think that we reshot that because it was a close-up of me.
I have no way of telling if that's Eric Stoltz or a stuntman, but it is clear Wilson is correct when he says the punch wasn't reshot. When you compare the footage of him being punched to the rest of the scene, it's clearly shot at some other point in time. The angle and lighting are vastly different, and even Wilson's face seems to have changed. He looks younger, like the strain of working on the film for months hasn't yet taken its toll.
I was walking on the ground, I didn't make a sound, then I turned around and I saw a clown.
Another guy who has a lot to say about the making of this movie is Crispin Glover, who played George McFly.
When I started actually analyzing the screenplay, once we were involved in the project, I had questions about things.
He famously fought with Zemeckis over the ending, saying it sent a bad message for the family to now be rich, that the movie should have emphasized the fact they loved each other, over them now having material possessions.
But didn't you see at the end the characters, they were more in love, I think, especially your character and the wife, they did seem to be...
But my argument is that part was good. I was all for it, but I think it pollutes it.
Do you think the money could have been a peripheral effect of the happiness that they had, that they
I think it's a bad message.
And I'm dying to know what he's referring to, about something so offensive in the original ending it got changed.
There was a different end. I won't go into so many details about it, but I had questions about it, and it did get changed. And I think there are other people that had questions because there are things in it that could, particularly in this day, be thought of as, offensive. There were different people. It wasn't Biff that was the servant to the family, and I had questions about it, and it did get.
Did they have slaves or something?
I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but
that's the first thing I thought of when you said that.
I know. Well,
my mind jumps to a racial thing, like maybe Marty has a band and Marvin Berry and the Starlight, now old men, play his backup. Like, geez, they don't get to have success of their own. Their whole life is spent propping up this spoiled kid. Or maybe Goldie Wilson isn't the mayor anymore, but the family butler, and we see him sweeping up around the house.
It's gonna be great! These are the 80s, man! It's the Cosby decade!
1985 was a time when audiences were very relaxed about things people on Twitter would find highly problematic. So if the filmmakers decided to take something out, it must have really been bad. I wonder what it possibly could have been.
I don't want to go into a lot. I am actually in the... I'll write it down in a book at some point.
I still can't get over the whole reshooting the movie to replace Eric Stoltz. Yeah, nowadays they would just CGI Michael J. Fox into the original footage, like they did with Army of the Dead.
And Zemeckis got really mad at me when I said this, and
did he yell at you?
He yelled.
Shenanigans. It's been a lot of fun, shenanigans. But now we've got to run. It's funny how the minutes seem to fly.